Now, what I'm not going to do at this point is open the floor to questions, because I know full well that a lot of the time we don't get that much information about people like Stephen. We might get it on a form, we might get a couple of words, we might get a phone message. So, what I want you to do, because I know some of you are already formulating your thoughts about how we can help Stephen, and this is how it will work, and this is how it will work. I want you to take some time to let that sink in, and I want to hand over to Mark, who's going to come up and talk a little bit about some of the work that he's doing, because we heard an awful lot from Stephen about the things that haven't worked, about what the blocks are.
My name's Mark Smith, and up until last January I was Director of Public Service Reform at Gateshead Council, and one of the things that I ran for 4 years was a piece of work called Changing Futures Northumbria. And what we did, really, we worked with people in 4 different sites who were in similar situations, not necessarily having left prison, but having not been understood by a system, society and services, and we're really struggling. Excuse me, sorry. So, I'm not going to go into massive detail, but I'll just describe the essence of it. We built a team full of people who were, we called them caseworkers, but that doesn't really begin to describe it. And we gave them, and they were from multiple organisations. Half of them had, well, I use the phrase lived experience. Half of them had gone through experiences and would come out the other side. And the other half were professionals who were, and this is the exact quote, forgive the language, were pissed off for all the right reasons. So these were probation officers, nurses, benefits clerks, housing experts, and they shed all of that, and they just wanted to work with people and meet them where they were at. They worked in pairs, and we gave them 2 rules initially and a budget. And we said to the rest of the kind of system, when these people say they need something, you've got to turn up. So my job was to make that possible. And the 2 rules were dead simple. Don't break the law and don't do any harm. But you can do anything else. And the first thing we asked them to do was, if you're going to work with somebody, don't assess them, for God's sake, understand them. So an assessment, I mean, we met people that had been assessed 500 or 600 times, but not understood at all. Stephen sounded like he had quite a few assessments, but not one bit of understanding. And when you understand somebody rather than assess them, you start to work out what matters to them right now and ultimately. So that work progressed with people that have been bouncing around the system for years. We met people that had been assessed. One fellow had been assessed 800 times, and he'd been worked with by at least 5,000 different public servants. And 2 million quid's worth of services have been spent on making his life worse because he'd been assessed and not understood. His story was not the same but not dissimilar. When our caseworkers got to know him and discovered that he liked to be creative, he liked to write things down, he was struggling with alcohol, but that didn't define him. They worked with him and met him where he was at really patiently, and day by day, just little things, and they had his back. They were there for him. They didn't have huge caseloads. They were able to commit time. And we did this with a number of different people, and what we saw, roughly 70-80% of the time, were people that the system had failed, were starting to thrive. They were working, they were building relationships, they were taking control of their own lives rather than being grateful recipients of services. We didn't want grateful recipients of services. Because if you start with services, you end up with services, and what we wanted to do was start with people, and then you end up with lives. So that was the premise. We pulled on specialists when we need them, but we didn't want to refer to them. We wanted to pull expertise in to help us, rather than push people on and say, we've done our bit. And it really does work. And I suppose the summary is that this was what we call a relational approach. It's all about working with relationships. There's a book written by a fantastic woman called Hilary Cottam. It's called Radical Help. I'd recommend it. It talks about relationships being at the centre of everything. Not in an airy-fairy way, but in a getting down into the gnarly details way. Sitting with somebody at an appointment, which they don't even know how to have an appointment. They would sit with them and they would help them. They would go to all lengths, really, as long as it was do no harm, stay legal, to help somebody. So if you start with relationships, you can work out, and the good thing about this is it saves money. Demand falls, acuity of presentation falls, victims of crime fall, so the type and the nature of the demand reduces into most services. The one nut we didn't crack was housing, because housing is a determinant of health and it's really difficult to do anything about it quickly. So the philosophy behind this work, I'll finish here, was really we learned from the people we worked with. We didn't bestow our wisdom onto them. We built upon their wisdom and worked outwards from it. And we looked, so I've done some research. I'm a part-time professor at Manchester Met University, and I did some research to pull all this together. And one of the things that we're able to learn is it boils down to three things, which was somewhere to live, something to do, and someone to love. And that someone to love it's platonic, it can be romantic, but it's about somebody having your back. And if those three things, we learned this from the recovery community, who were brilliant in helping us to build this work. If those three things happen, you don't need to over-design services. You just need to learn how to build and endure relationships. And that's what we did. And it really does work. We're just trying to grow it now into a wider space. Don't know if that's what you had in mind.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark.
You're hiding behind there.
Oh, no, I was just keeping out of the way. Thank you.